All right, for the record, could I get your name and title, please?
Charlie Crist, member of Congress.
And would you like to, for the purposes of this interview, be referred to as representative or congressman?
Doesn't matter. Charlie's fine, really.
Okay, you're Charlie then. So the first thing, and this is one I get a lot just in casual conversation when I see people watch our station. A lot of them will talk about housing because a lot of people are getting their insurance, they pay yearly, and they're going bug-eyed by the increases. So one thing I've heard a lot from both you and your opponent is affordable housing and your plans for it. Could you tell our viewers what your plan for affordable housing is if elected?
Well, it's not what Governor DeSantis' plan is because he doesn't have one, which is patently obvious. What I think we need to do is make sure that we allow for and create affordable housing for my fellow Floridians. You know, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire in Florida, you're probably doing all right, but most of us aren't. And I think, Marco, what we need to be doing is reinstating the Sadowski Trust Fund at the state level, which of course is for housing. It's for creating affordable housing, whether you're buying or renting. Both are important, and Governor DeSantis has just cut it. And the Republican legislature followed his heed and passed legislation that would cut it permanently going forward. That's why we need a new governor, somebody who really cares about people and understands that housing is in a crisis in the Sunshine State. In fact, Marco, it was recently reported that Florida is the most expensive state to live in America, more than California, more than New York. We're number one, and that's a disaster from disaster DeSantis.
One thing that I thought was interesting with the Sadowski Fund last year is that, or I would say most recently, is that their agreement in the legislature was to cap it at about 9%, a little over that, with the promise that it wouldn't be swept in future years. I'd like to get your opinion on that and what you think it really should be bringing in, if 9% or what would be the ideal percentage in your mind?
It should be whatever it needs to be in order to be able to help our fellow Floridians who aren't able to afford housing. And there shouldn't be a cap on it. It ought to be, you know, without a roof, to make sure that people can afford to have a roof over their heads. Capping it is ill-advised. I mean, if you actually care about people who aren't able to afford a home, to afford the rent, to be able to put a roof over their head and their families' heads, then, you know, you shouldn't be in public office, because one of the most important things is that a public servant is supposed to serve with a servant's heart and actually care about people, instead of caring about his own political future and running for the White House, because that's obviously what Ron DeSantis is focused on. He doesn't care about Florida anymore, and he's using her as a stepping stone, and Florida is more special than that.
One thing I've read about one of the pillars to your plan was housing czar idea, who would coordinate with local governments pursuing housing grants. A, please correct any part of that I got wrong. And B, how would you envision the housing czar pursuing that?
Well, what I think is we do have to work with any level of government. The state government, really, the Sadowski Fund is the main nugget, if you will, that can bring immediate assistance to people, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to help our fellow Floridians get a roof over their head. And we need to do away with what Governor DeSantis and the legislature have done, which is basically almost eliminated. Number two, we need to work with our federal friends. I serve in the Congress, and in the Congress, one of my colleagues is now the Secretary of HUD, Housing, which we're talking about, and Urban Development. So I would immediately, and already have, reached out to Secretary Marcia Fudge, asked for her assistance. The governor won't do that, DeSantis, because all he wants to do is complain about the current administration in Washington. But we have to work together to help people. I learned that during the BP oil spill. I learned that when we were in the Great Recession, working with President Obama to help my fellow Floridians, because that's the way you're supposed to help people work together, get things done. And as you mentioned, yes, the local level too. And the best example I can give you is Mayor Ken Welch of St. Petersburg, the mayor I love. I endorsed him. He's the first Black mayor in St. Petersburg history. He's doing a great job. And he suggested almost $70 million at the local level to help people with housing. So you've got local, state, federal. It's a three-prong approach to try to address this housing problem that Florida and frankly, the United States are dealing with. Governor DeSantis has done zero. That's why he's got to go. That's why I'm running for governor of Florida. So you have a governor who cares about you again.
And I do remember, this is going to be a softball, I'll admit, but I mean, it's true. I do remember because I was here in 08, 09, you had caught a lot of grief when you had worked with President Obama, pardon me, on the stimulus bill at the time.
That's exactly right. His office called mine, you have a good memory, in February of 09 to meet him in Fort Myers, Florida, just south of you there in Bradenton, and me in St. Pete, to go and be with him at a rally that he was going to hold in order to address what was going on, with the Great Recession. And they called it the Recovery Act, or the stimulus, maybe it was better known as. So I decided to go. I appeared with him on stage there in Fort Myers. I actually ended up introducing him that day. It was his first trip out of Washington after getting sworn in as our president. And it was a great day. He hugged me right after I finished the introduction at the podium. And somebody took a picture of that, Marco. And after that, my life as a Republican pretty much ended. People were very upset about the fact that I was there with a Democratic president. But unfortunately, it was more than that. I was not only there with a Democratic president, I was there with the first Black president. And sadly enough, systemic racism is alive and well in our country today. We see it all the time. We saw it most recently in Buffalo, New York, with that horrible mass shooting up there. But this stuff has to stop. I mean, we've got to get back to good. We have to work together, as I mentioned earlier, whether the issue is housing or, whatever it might be, hurricanes, anything that might affect our dear Florida. We have to work together to protect her and protect our people.
I'd like to ask you this question so you can address criticism from your opponent, and it's on the subject of affordable housing. You probably already have an idea of what it is, but I know one of the main tenets, I spoke with Commissioner Fried about her plan, and definitely both of you have made great pains for the most part when you're in public to talk really about DeSantis, because whoever wins would go against Governor DeSantis. But I know when she compares herself and her plan to yours, she talks about the Sadowski Fund and that the raids started preceding you and went during your administration and after your administration. And her big pillar is, I will not sign any legislation that would raid a single cent from the Sadowski Fund. I'd like you to address her criticism and why you would be a reliable leader on the issue of affordable housing for Floridians.
Well, I didn't really hear her issue of criticism from what I heard you just say. What I think is important is that we understand that we all need to work together, not just Democrats, but Republicans, Democrats, and independents, to help the people of our state get through this housing crisis. That's what our focus needs to be. We don't need to quibble among ourselves. We need to be focused on getting rid of Ron DeSantis, who's done absolutely nothing to try to help the people of Florida. And let's face it, what's really going on, Marco, he's running for president of the United States. That's crystal clear to anybody who's paying attention to politics today in America. And he's going after every single hard right, red meat issue he can to appeal to those hard right Republican primary voters, not even general election voters, in 2024, and he's forgotten Florida in 2022. And that's why I believe that Floridians are sick of it. They don't want to be used as pawns in his game of presidential politics. It is clear he cares more about the White House than he does about your house. And that's not right. Floridians deserve better, and we're going to get it. It's why I'm running for governor. I look forward to turning Florida blue in 22.
And before I go into the special session, so you don't think she's criticized you on the Sadowski Fund? Because what she's saying is it was raided even during your administration.
Oh, I missed that point. Well, it wasn't raided. We utilized that money to keep people employed. We were in a great recession. I have experience, and not everybody in this race has the experience as being governor of the state of Florida. By the grace of God alone, I do. And what you learn from experience is that you need to do what needs to be done at the time. And by doing what we did in the first Crist administration, we saved 20,000 teachers their jobs. I think that's actually a good thing. We made sure that law enforcement was able to stay on the beat. I think that's important to keep people safe. We did what we needed to do to make sure we had firefighters that were still employed, that if somebody got a call about a fire at their house, somebody was there to answer the call. I call that responsible government. I call that doing what's right. I'm sorry Nikki didn't feel that way, but that's how I feel. And that's why having an experienced person at the helm is critically important. And this much is true as well. More than anybody in this race, I have actually already served more as governor than even the incumbent. And it shows that he doesn't have much experience because he's more focused on national politics than doing what's right for Florida people. And that breaks my heart.
Would you think then it's fair to say that under the circumstances then you felt like you had made the right decision considering the recession at that point?
No question about it. I mean, would any of us like to see 20,000 teachers fired because we don't have the resources to help and keep them employed? Would anybody not want to have cops on the beat so that you and your children could be safe in our communities throughout the state of Florida? Would anybody actually want to not have firefighters at the ready in case, God forbid, your home got struck by lightning and it was going to be burned down and nobody could answer the call on that? I mean, this is common sense, practical leadership that I know Floridians want, that I've already delivered before. It's why I'm the leading candidate in this race for the primary. And a poll came out last week that has me beating Ron DeSantis too. It doesn't surprise me. Floridians are smart.
Let's go into, with the time remaining, into the special session that happened recently. Sure. What did you think of what came out of that session?
Nothing came out of it. It was like a tort reform session. They falsely claimed that they were coming up to Tallahassee to talk about property insurance. Well, property insurance in Florida right now is a nightmare. When I first got elected your governor for the first time back in 2006, it was a nightmare then too, because nobody was addressing the issue. So I got elected in November of 06, January of 07, I got sworn in as governor of Florida. Within a month or so, I called a special session, just like he just called, only we actually did something. We reduced the cost of property insurance by 10%. There are people screaming all over Florida about the high cost of property insurance. They went to Tallahassee for almost a week and did zip, nada, nothing. I mean, that's the incompetence and the leadership, lack of leadership, I should say, in Ron DeSantis. It's pathetic. And I know that Floridians deserve better. They know that I did better. And that's why I believe I'm going to win this election. And we'll get Florida back on track. And more than that, we'll return the sunshine to the Sunshine State, because it's been gloomy under this dude.
I know I know if you get elected, Governor DeSantis is very, very popular amongst his Republican base of supporters. You've been in, I want to say, 4 statewide elections. You might have been in one, and this is where my memory fails me, because I don't know if previous to 06, if there were instances where you had run statewide. And honestly, it's my fault for not looking at that. But I know 06, 2010, 2014, and now you're run here. You've been in some close elections. Rick Scott obviously was probably the most competitive one, decided by a fraction. And that was a year where Republicans nationwide did very well. So in this primary, I'm aware both of you are really trying to convince people, not only do you have the best ideas, but you can straight up win. This year right now, a lot of the fundamentals look favorable to Republicans. Given your run in 2014, which was admittedly very competitive, what would you say to people who go, I don't even have anything against the congressman, I'm just not sure after 2014 that he can really win in 2022, considering the fundamentals of the races right now, nationally and statewide?
Well, again, I'll refer to experience. Look, I'm an old quarterback. I played at St. Pete High. I also played for 2 years at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. And I understand what leadership requires. Leadership requires focus and the ability to do what's right, to get to your goal, and try to do it with grace and decency. And that's how we're running our campaign, with grace, decency, and honesty and integrity. And that's what the people of Florida deserve. And so how do you beat Ron DeSantis? I'll be straight up with you, Marco. Get more votes than he does. That's the simple answer. But the more extended answer, frankly, is Florida's about a third Republican, about a third independent, and about a third Democratic. So in my view, Florida clearly is purple. And what you mentioned it yourself, Governor DeSantis is popular among the hard right, red meat Republican primary voters. No question. I give him that. But then what do you have left? All of the Democrats, all of the independents, plus moderate Republicans. And I'm hearing from them. And so if you can build a coalition of the decent, if you will, and have Republicans that are moderate, Democrats, and independents, you've got a great opportunity to get Florida back on track and make sure that we're doing what's right for people first, instead of Ron DeSantis' MO of doing what's right for Ron DeSantis' political future first. We deserve better than that, and we're going to get it. I'm going to beat him.